the Deputy Head of Libraries Development in the Local Government Management Agency, and Joan is going to talk to us about Spring into Storytime, a collective COVID-19 approach to programme delivery. So I'll hand over to you now, Joan. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks, Fiona. Good morning, everyone. And thanks very much to Cathal and to Elaine and the team who have put on this really, really useful and interesting occasion. And thanks very much for inviting me to speak at it as well. I've just got a little message to say my connection is unstable. So I hope that I won't be the first person to have technical issues for the seminar. So fingers crossed that that's just something that won't impact. But as Marion has pointed out already, public libraries have been operating very strategically in this period, and that's been true, of course, at local level, but also nationally. We've been working very hard in order to position libraries strategically. Marion has already mentioned the online resources and the moving to enable membership, which members of the public who weren't library members, we had to put in place arrangements to facilitate them in order to be able to set up memberships, and that involved negotiations with the content providers, Belinda and the DCC team, who, as Marion acknowledged, were very helpful in setting that up. We've also put in place a number of guides and resources for members of the public, for library staff, and including things such as guides on online events and guides on videos and making videos. Then there's the national guidance on the physical handling, which we were very had to work quite hard in order to get a national approval on that, because clearly the HSE, the Department of Health, had quite a number of priorities, but we were able to get that approved by the Deputy Chief Medical Officer. So that was, a really good official guidance, and that is being used as a reference in some other countries. So that's a really good development there, and also models for delivery for the delivery services, a number of different models that library local authorities, depending on their capability, could look to bring on board to actually deliver items to those who were cocooning or socially distanced. We've been coordinating a Europe-wide discussion and information sharing through the NAPL Forum, the National Authorities on Public Libraries in Europe Forum, and that's been really invaluable in learning from other countries' situations and experiences. And then also touching base internationally with IFLA and other colleagues in Australian and American libraries as well. Working with the Department of Health as well to get visibility in their Together campaign, particularly with Healthy Ireland at Your Libraries, and working, of course, with the Department of Rural and Community Development, who are the public library parent department. And sorry, I've just noticed my screen I need to go back on my slides. We've gone through the whole thing, so I'm going to have to start again. I beg your pardon for that. Yeah, as I say, working with the Department of Rural and Community Development and collating all of the information on the initiatives that all of the public libraries have been engaged in, and this has given them the information to raise the awareness, of course, across government departments and at the highest levels. And also then, of course, a pilot with Microsoft to look at working with DRCD again, and that's looking at maybe extending Wi-Fi beyond a local public library, so that issue with broadband that Aoife mentioned could potentially be enhanced a bit. That's at pilot stage at the moment, but could be a very useful development. And of course, the current focus on the return to opening branches and looking at developing models in conjunction with the city and county librarians, and a huge range of different communications and engagements with the city and county librarians at all stages, to ensure that everybody is fully aware of all developments and sharing across authorities, so that everybody is benefiting from everybody else's experience. So it's been a really, really interesting, if very unusual period. And the one that I'm going to focus on, the initiative I'm going to focus on today, is Spring into Storytime. And just to give a little bit of background to that, it comes under the Right to Read at Your Library programme, which is one of the 3 strategic programmes of the National Public Library Strategy, Our Public Libraries 2022. And this programme is aimed at literacy and reading development across local authorities. There is a national steering group which oversees it, and that's chaired by the Department of Rural and Community Development, and has membership from the Department of Education and Skills, Children and Youth Affairs, from NALA, from the City and County Management Association, the City and County Librarians, the Sport Ireland, and the LGMA. And it's supported by the Strategic Programmes Committee, which is the implementation committee for all of the strategic programmes for the Public Library Strategy. At local level then, a Right to Read coordinator has been appointed in each of the local authorities' library services, and they coordinate the implementation at local level, and they're supported in that by Right to Read networks. And those networks are consist of both other sections within the local authority and then local partner agencies as well. So they vary from local authority to local authority, but they generally include the CIPSI, the Children and Young People's Services Committee, the ETBs, the Education and Training Boards, the Local Sports Partnership, and the community section in the local authority. Those would be the most common members across the networks. So Right to Read has, in terms of children and family initiatives, there are 4 main initiatives, and they're delivered across the year. Spring into Storytime is the first one, and that's obviously delivered in spring. And then it moves on to Summer Stars, which is a reading programme aimed at supporting children during the time when they're out of school and when you have the traditional summer slide in literacy and reading ability. And that programme aims to address that. Then Children's Book Festival takes place in October, and Family Time at Your Library runs in December. So throughout the year, there's an aim to have a programme that's aimed at literacy and reading development right across the year. So for Spring into Storytime, just a quick background on that. It was introduced first in 2017 as part of the Right to Read programme. It runs for the month of April generally, and the objective is to provide a story time in every single branch across the branch network. So that's 330 branches approximately. In 2019, targets were introduced for the whole of the Right to Read programme, but in particular for Spring into Storytime, they were introduced so that each small branch had to give a minimum of 1 story time, each medium branch 2, and each large branch would deliver 4 story times across the period. And as you can see, the programme has been growing year on year. Since 2017, it's almost doubled in terms of events and more than doubled in terms of participants. the increase between 2018 and 2019, not quite as significant as that, at about 6%, but still shows, you know, steady growth. So Spring into Storytime 2020, the targets and the format for the Right to Read programme are devised by the Strategic Programmes Committee in the autumn and then approved by the National Steering Group. So that took place then in October 2020 for this year's Right to Read programme. The local authorities, the Right to Read coordinators, prepared their action plans for their local implementation for the year, and those were submitted in January 2020. So everything was completely on course. Branding and design, you can see the Summer Stars, or sorry, Spring into Storytime design here. And that was all put in place in February 2020. And then, of course, COVID-19 struck. So the first question was, can we still have a Spring into Storytime? And the Strategic Programmes Committee had a virtual meeting, and as Marion has already mentioned, there were a lot of local authorities where they had already a considerable online presence and a capacity in terms of providing videoed story times, and we had developed the guidelines in terms of story time and videoing. So the committee felt that it would be possible to pivot to use Alan's phrase, or Alan's words, Spring into Storytime, to an online Spring into Storytime, and to give local authorities some time, maybe a little bit more time, to make this change, and in recognition that a number of authorities would be hugely challenged in terms of resources, with staff being redeployed or temporarily working from home or having no access to online resources to actually develop videos, that we would actually run it from over April and May this time, as opposed to just April. And then the copyright penny dropped, and because, of course, as you probably know, the Copyright and Related Acts 2000 Section 90, while it does permit recitations and readings in public of excerpts of copyrighted works, it specifically does not allow for copies to be made and made publicly available. So at this point, it seemed as if Spring into Storytime would be derailed again. However, there's been a lot of mentions of how people have stepped up in the times of COVID, and how there's been a different approach to things. And there was, at that time, I mean, it was still March, so very early in the process, but there were signs of a sort of international philanthropy, and a sort of sense that rules could be might be put aside, and that you know, we were in a different space. So on that basis, and that was evidenced by the Australian Library and Information Association negotiation agreement with the Australian publishers, and things like author David Williams with his public waiving of an encouragement for use of his works in any form that anybody felt that they would like to, even using them as toilet paper if they wanted to do that. So taking those as encouraging signs, the head of Libraries Development, Stuart Hamilton, enlisted the support of the Department of Rural and Community Development and the Department of Education if it would be needed, and contacted the Irish publishers and to look to see if it would be possible to get an agreement on. And Publishing Ireland in turn held internal discussions and with the Irish Writers' Union, and very quickly it seemed that the spirit of philanthropy was going to be alive and well in Ireland, and so it was possible to come quite quickly to an agreement. And the agreement was that license fees would be waived, that selected books could be used, and this is a very broad selected books. It really more or less relates to all Irish author content, and not necessarily exclusively. So that term is actually very expansive, although it looks limiting. That there would be an Irish writing focus for this Spring into Storytime, and that authors would provide readings of their own works, and that library staff could also read any of the author works, and that all of the videos will then be taken down post-COVID-19. So it looked like we were all back on track again. The Right to Read coordinators were notified. As I've mentioned, there were a number of authorities who had existing expertise, who had existing content. For some others, it was a question of developing new skills, and the guidelines were there to support that. The Irish publishers got to work with the authors to develop author readings. And then we hit the next snag, which was getting access to books, because a number of the coordinators contacted us to say that they were no longer in their branches, the libraries were closed, and they had no way of getting the books in order to do the readings. So this was another hurdle that had to be overcome, but we went going back to the Irish publishers to see if they could come up with a solution, and very quickly they identified that they could get PDFs of the books and that they could make those available. So we collated a wish list from the coordinators and sent that to the publishers, and we are still getting those coming through, because I think they didn't anticipate the level of demand. And there were over 40 titles on the list, and so those are still coming through, but we're getting those PDFs, and those can be made available for the readings. So the Spring into Storytime is back on track. So it's all the videos are available on library websites, on Facebook, on YouTube. We've developed a video gallery on the Libraries Ireland website, and we're posting links to all of those on the video gallery, and using social media to promote them, using the hashtags Spring into Storytime and Love Irish Writing. And we created two sort of peak focus points for social media: World Book Day on the 23rd of April and Europe Day on the 9th of May. So here's just a quick screenshot of the Libraries Ireland video gallery. And the videos can be searched by age group. There are 5 age groups from 0 to 2 up to 10 to 12. It can be searched by category. So you've got author readings, books, rhymes, full readings or excerpts of books, stories and workshops. And obviously it can be filtered by county as well. So how have we done? Well, the story so far is that there are 416 videos online as of yesterday, and that's from all of the local authorities across the country. There are 225,883 views to date, and if I just cross-reference that with the number of attendees at Storytimes in 2019, that was 20,500. So I know it's comparing apples and oranges, but it still suggests that there's, you know, a really, really good reach that has already taken place in terms of Spring into Storytime. 20 author readings to date, and that's growing on a weekly basis. And obviously a much enhanced relationship with Irish publishing and the Irish writers, and increased library expertise in terms of producing, starring and disseminating videos. So in terms of the next steps, well, we're running Spring into Storytime to the end of May, so more stories, more author readings to the end of May. Then Summer Stars is the next area for focus, and for that we're looking at Summer Stars online ebooks and e-audio books, and creating a Summer Stars focus there. Working with the publishers again for chapter a day readings, as opposed to just excerpts of books or full readings of preschool storybooks. A national story competition, which we're hoping to do in conjunction with the Irish publishers. Quizzes, which the local authorities are already running to some extent, and which will focus then on summer stars. And where possible, then the possibility of some select and collect options for children to actually pick up printed copies of books to read over the period, which won't be possible to do in all authorities, but where possible, some authorities are looking at doing that. So in conclusion, I would say that the pivot to Spring into Storytime online is proving to be really successful, and definitely shows that the spirit of innovation and inventiveness is very, very strong and very alive in public libraries, and that the spirit of philanthropy is also alive and kicking in Ireland during COVID-19. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joan. That was fascinating, and it certainly highlights the importance of collaboration across multiple sectors at this time. And also you really highlighted to us the challenge to move a face-to-face Storytime program into an online form. So thank you.